Hello everyone. My name is Varun Gokarna and I am the Vice Chairperson of IEEE DBIT Student Branch. Before we start with today's workshop, I would like to invite Shreyas Kulkarni, the Chairperson of IEEE DBIT Student Branch, to address the gathering and brief you about the event. Shreyas. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Hello and very good morning to one and all present here. As Varun mentioned, I am Shreyas Kulkarni and I'm the chairperson of IEEE DBIT Student Branch. I, on behalf of IEEE DBIT Student Branch, welcome you all to the workshop on 2D animation using Pivot. Before we get started, I would like to brief you about the workshop. The workshop is a part of an annual IEEE DBIT event called as Nexus. Nexus 2020 is about the workshops, competitions, talks, and much more. The motto of Nexus 2020 is to connect and empower engineers. But we don't actually restrict it to engineers. We invite everyone to join in for our events. IEEE DBIT is a student branch that never lags behind. We love to innovate and come up with events not only for our college, but also for students outside the college. IEEE DBIT is a student branch that aims to create awareness among the student community about the recent technological advancements and make them aware of the industry standards and expectations, thereby bridging the gap between academia and industry. We are constantly looking up to the IEEE's motto, that is to help develop technologies for the betterment of humanity, and Nexus 2020 is a step to do so. Follow us on our social media handles to be updated about the next upcoming events that are organized in Nexus and that will be organized in the future. I would take this opportunity to thank our principal, Dr. Prasanna Nambiar, and our HOD, Dr. Ashwini Kotar Shetty, for providing us with all the resources and guidance. I would also like to thank our branch counselors, Ms. Jijo George and Ms. Lakshmi Vinayak Vittal, for their constant support and motivation. So stay home, stay safe, and enjoy the workshop.
Thank you, Shreyas. Now I would like to introduce our instructor for workshop, Mr. James Robin. James is reporting head of IEEE DBIT student branch. Without further ado, we will start with the workshop. James, you may go.
Yeah.
Start.
So hi guys, good morning. So I'll be conducting the pivot workshop, and so this application was introduced to me quite some time back. So like I knew about this from YouTube. There was a trend few years back where they're making videos using this stick figure animation in 2D form, and it was very interesting because at that point of time, like to do something like easy like this was, it was fun because you could create it very easily, and at the same time that means it's not complicated. That's what I'm meant to say. So that's about how I knew about Pivot. And so to give a brief overview of the history of Pivot, so around 2004, 2005, there's this person named Peter Bone, and he introduced this application called Pivot because his brother wanted to make a small animation video, but then each time he had to create a stick figure using paint, and he had to make each frame separately. So it was very difficult for him. So Peter Bone invented this application, and that's how we got started with Pivot. So right now, which we'll be using is the fourth version of Pivot, which is Pivot 4.2.8, I guess. And yeah, so at this point in time, we have so many effects and stuff like that. So it'll be easier for us to use. And let me start sharing the screen. Yeah. So as you can see, this is the pivot application. I think you all must have downloaded it. Uh, yeah. So to start with, pivot to start with, uh, see now each time we want to move a frame, just click spacebar and it creates another frame. So first, what it does that it saves that particular frame in which you move the stickman, and then it creates a next frame. So now, as you can see, there's two frames here, and now if you go here to file, you can see you can open a new page. You can open a previous animation. You can save the animation, and you can export animations. So in the drive folder which was provided to you, there are certain animations which are already present, preloaded, and you must have got some with when you're installing the application also. And here we can load our background. We can choose a background instead of this white uh, default background. And then there is load sprite image, and there's load figure type. So load figure type is basically the stickman is a figure type. So there are different figure types which are there in pivot, which is not part of the application, which you have to download it separately, which I provided it in the drive. And then here we can create a figure type. So yeah, and then here is the frames. So each frame you have made will be present here, and you can see, like, if you move this stickman a couple of centimeters and you save it, when you go to the third frame, you can see that you can see the onion peel of the second frame. Onion peel is basically where your last frame was present, and next is the play button, which is basically you're playing the whole thing in one motion. So you can loop it, or that's according to you. And here is the frames per second. So as you know, like if you see YouTube and all, the 60 frames per second, there's 40 frames per second. So the amount of frames, if you have more number of frames, you can choose a higher frame rate. Because what happens is that if you have lesser number of frames and you put it on, like here it's on 23, it'll be really quick, and you won't get to see most of it. And yeah, so that is that. And there's play and stop button. And then if you go down, uh, you can edit this particular stickman, which is there on the screen. And here is to delete the stickman, which will take it out. And then this is the copy one, where you can copy another. Wait. Oh, yeah. So wait, I'll see that. And yeah, so I'll get to that. This is the color changing. You can change the color of the particular figure. So now I've chosen the yellow color, green color, whatever. And yeah, here you can add the frame, which is the same as spacebar. And spacebar also works as save function, like I said. So that is about all the options which are there in pivot. Now, what I'm going to show you is do the two basic things, which is running and which is walking. So we'll start with walking first. So before we start that, if you want to now when you open your pivot, you'll have a border line which is present at a default uh, amount. And if you want to change that, go to edit, go to options, and then you can set the width and the height. So I usually choose 1000 to 400. So you can choose anything. Now if I and see, it reduced in size. So you can choose that. And and then we can add a background, which is which you can load it from here. So you can choose any PNG files which is there. So let's say I take a random picture. So now I have a background. So you can do this. You can even create your own background, which we're using Paint, which we will do it later. And yeah, so this is about the basics in total. So let's start with walk-in. That is the basic, the first thing in Pivot. So we'll edit this figure. We'll add a leg, feet, basically. So as you can see here, you can oh yeah, I forgot to explain one thing, which is yeah. So the yellow part is basically you can hold it and move the entire thing, and if you click this dots, the black dots, it moves that particular arm or leg or whatever, the particular joint which is there. So yeah, so you can turn the whole thing and you can move it. So we can, let's create a walk-in figure. So now we'll give it a name. So we can take this out. Wait. Yeah. And so first we'll start with walk-in and we'll move the 1 feet here. So if you create a smaller uh, like what I mean to say is that each time you create a smaller frame, it becomes better because the whole video becomes smoother. And you can see the onion peel which is there. It's called an onion peel, which is there of the previous animation. So the high frame, because the frame rate is very high, you can't see half the thing. So usually we keep it around 12, between 10 and 15. So that's So see, he's taking a small step, and let's say you want to add a ball to it, like a small figure which you can create. So you go to create figure type, and then add a circle, and you can only join another segment on the dots which are present. Yeah. And this is to increase and decrease the density of the thickness of the segment which is being selected. And I can, yeah. So now we have a ball circle figure. Now let's say this man is kicking the ball. So move it, we'll move him a bit ahead. So now you can see he's kicking a ball, and so that's how you do a basic, very basic pivot animation. So now let's say you want to save it. Go to save as, and you can either save it as a, you can save it as a pivot file. And if you want to, like, let's say you want to make a whole, like, let's say you want to make a 2 3 minute a short video for that uh, reason. So you can save it first as this, and then you can open it using your Windows media player, and you can then edit it accordingly you want. You can add music and stuff like that. So save it. Yeah. So and then now for another thing to notice, that when you're making a figure of your own, uh, you won't be able to just take a line and then just draw it like you saw it, like how I was making the ball before. You have to connect it to a segment and then delete the other segments, the previous segments which are there, because pivot animations require a point to start with. So I can't just make a circle and then drop it in here. And coming to the effects which you will be having. Yeah, so first we'll load a previously installed figure which is there in your folders. So this fire. So you can install this in onto your current animation, or a realistic man. According to this, it's a realistic man. And for effects, second. So I've already this is the one which was there in the internet, which I've already downloaded. So the thing is, one thing good about Pivot is that you'll get various effects and animation and stick figures online. So there's already preloaded. So if you want to, let's say you want to make one figure of your own, for that you'll need Photoshop, and then you'll have to create for each frame. Like now, like in the previous uh, in my previous animation, there was a fire, so that is created using Photoshop. So you will have to create for each screen, you will have to create at least around 6 or 7 to show that okay, a fire is burning. So yeah, so you need Photoshop for that. And let's say you want to take this person, this stick figure, and copy to a new one. So click on it, uh, copy figure, open a new one, and paste it. So now you have that figure. So you can transfer those figures to a new one. So I would suggest, if you guys are making it in the future, if you guys making anything related to Pivot, download the files which are there. It's available in the net, and you can use those if you want, or you can use a the usually I think with the Pivot software there are preloaded animations, so you can edit on those. So you don't have to do most of most of the work. So that's a one good thing about Pivot. And the other thing is that Pivot is easier because there is no coordinates, or like, it's first thing, it's not in 3D, so you're only going left to right or right to left or up and down. There is no you're not going 360. And there's a similar, not similar, but there's another animation application called Scratch. You might have heard of it. So in that, you will have to select each coordinate of where your animation has to be. So if you do this, you'll get some sense of idea how to do a basic animation. And then if you ever move to Scratch, it'll be a bit easier. And if you actually do Scratch in the future anytime, then you can do the MIT app, which is used for making applications. So it is a similar, uh, it has a similar foundation. So yeah, so yeah. Now let's. So now I've copied it. This- Yeah. So let's create a floor first. So for running, let's create a floor. So for that, we go to add, wait, create figure type. Take a line, and we'll join it to one of those legs. And if you click this, you can choose your point to move it. So now I've chosen this. So this is your, like I said before, this colored point is the one that helps you move the whole uh, uh, segment which is there. And you can even, wait. And we'll add it to the animation. So let's increase the size of the canvas. 1 second. Now we can see there's a gap, a frame which is not right. We go back. The heat takes off. It takes off on the. Yeah. So this was like the basics, like I said. So now since I have 32 frames and I can increase my frames a little bit, so it becomes. So to make this running a bit more smoother, so you'll have to go between each frame. You can insert a frame between two frames, and then accordingly uh, make that frame in such a way that you get a smooth transition between each frame, and then you can set it like about 20. So that's it for the basics. So Tomorrow I'll be teaching you about how to use the effects, how to create your own background, and then we'll be creating a video from scratch. So using all the things that I'll be teaching you later. So yeah, so that's about it. So I'll see you guys tomorrow then. So I'll let Varun take over for now.
Well, thank you for today. We will see you tomorrow at the same time. You may leave